lounging, son.
Welcome back, everyone. My name is Jen, and I have my co-host Ryan here with me for another episode of Thought Balloon. Today, we are spicing things up a little bit since I am the one who asked Ryan to read some books. So we're gonna go over some French-Canadian books today. Two of my favorite titles. So the first one is Little Russia, written by Francis Desharnais and published by a Quebec publisher called Les Éditions Pow Pow. And the other one is by the same publisher, different writer. It's Michel Hellman, and the title is Nunavik. So I sent two copies, English copies, obviously, to Ryan. I read them in French, so that's going to be interesting to see if there's any difference in the translations. And yeah, Ryan, how did you like them? What's your first impression?
I love stuff like this. So I was pleasantly surprised. I had no idea what you were sending me. It was a mystery. I love stuff that is nonfiction. You know what I mean? Like I don't read a ton of it, but I have read quite a bit of nonfiction, But I thought it was interesting because this is like based on factual events and history in Canada, stuff I didn't know.
The first one, Little Russia, is
Russia,
based on true historical events. So it's the true story of the writer's grandparents. And Nunavik is I guess we can say a travel diary. So someone who, like Michel Hellman, who went to Nunavik and is just telling us his trip and like what he noticed and everything. Yeah. So they're both like nonfiction, and they're both based on true events. And yeah, I was really excited to send you something that's happening here in Quebec. I was like, ooh, Ryan is gonna discover new stuff.
Yeah, and like I can't say his name. I'm glad you said it first because I would have butchered the shit out of it. But yeah, Little Russia. I really like his cartooning. Yeah, it's really funny to see like this when they leave society and they kind of like build their own community, right? And yeah. I think it's really interesting that they all come together and stuff, but then like the animosity that comes from that, because like it's like living in close quarters with somebody. When you see somebody every day, eventually they probably are going to get under your fucking skin and they're going to piss you off. And you see that here. But then what I really liked was the women in the town and how they're like, no, motherfucker, like we have a voice too. That I really liked. I was like, that's sort of like it that's when the book got a little bit more interesting to me, because it is set in the past. So like you do see this, like the man's gonna go work, the woman stays at home. But like, dude, you just moved your fucking woman to this town and you're just sticking her in a house. Of course she's going to get pissed off. She's like, that's not what she's about. And so, that aspect of building this community off the grid, because like I've often been like, you know what, it would be nice to kind of be off grid and away from the bullshit in the city. But obviously you're going to miss certain things, right? And like not having, running water at first would probably drive some crazy. I like showers, you know what I mean? Like I don't know that I could just not have like a hot shower after a long day. But yeah, I just, it's cool to see the way people can come together to build something special. But then of course, right, things get ruined by society. And that's just kind of like what I got from the book, is how society and what society can dictate is the norm can kind of ruin shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how else to like kind of phrase that. It's probably very early.
I think what you're saying is really right, because just the title, the name Little Russia, it comes because it's a small village in Abitibi. It's like up north of Quebec. And when they are to start, the village was a very different, like, a different construction. It was a community, but it was based as a cooperative. So like,
there we go, co-op. There we go.
Exactly. Okay. The outsiders look. So people who were in other villages or big cities were looking at that village and saying like, what they're doing is really weird. It looks like communism. It looks like a little Russia.
So
they're starting seeing this village as a little Russia, hence the title, and hence why in the history of this village it was called Little Russia, because people were not understanding the concept. But it's kind of like the evolution of the character in this new like state of mind and this new, because everything they're like working in the woods, right? They're cutting woods, they're sharing everything. All the money they accumulate is going to the village, and then it's separated equally in between like everybody. It's a co-op, right? So it's really interesting to see that. But as like you said, my favorite part is really about the woman, because that the Francis' grandmother was one of the first one who started saying that women had a place in taking decisions. She was like really trying to bring women into taking decisions for the village and for like other cities. So I thought that was really cool, interesting. And actually, this book was won like 5 different local prizes. It was really, when it came out, it was really like an amazing read. It was really different and out of the box um, for a comic from here, from Quebec. It was really different, and I really, really loved sharing that story with you. I'm glad you liked it. Don't you find that there's a little bit like the way that the panels are made, there's a little bit of like, it's a little bit poetic. Don't you find like there's a rhythm to it, especially in the beginning when he goes to like
Yeah.
to the wood and everything, like the panels, the way it's done, it's like almost like cinematographic a little bit, you know, like in movies a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean it's really well laid out, and it's not burdened with too much text. You know, like
Yeah,
there's quite a bit of pages where even like just the, and I was just looking at the ending again, just like the last few pages, it's just like you see the woods and then it fades out and you see the skyline, and like I think that the artist really allows just the simplicity of the art to come through and to tell the reader like what, you know, like the emotions. And that's another thing, like the emotions, the anger, the frustration, or the, you know, like the main, what's the main character, sorry, it's been Marcel.
Marcel, yeah.
So Marcel, like just watching him from the beginning to the end, like what he goes through, and then his wife Antoinette, as Marcel's doing what he's doing, and he's trying to like make his way and like provide, like Antoinette's doing her thing and trying to like almost lead like a woman revolution within this community, within this co-op. And it's a really special kind. I can see why it won awards. It's evident, you know what I mean? Like this is, and I like cartooning like this. It's not like what you get in regular comic books, you know, but that's why I pick up books like this, or I'll pick up, you know, like stuff like by Craig Thompson. It's not like the generic stuff. Well, it's fucked up. Yeah, it's not the generic style that you would see at like Marvel or DC. Like there are artists at Marvel and DC that stand out, but there is like that, what they call like a house style, where it's just like it's serviceable art. It's passable. Like it's there for the story and that's it. It's like, okay, you're doing a job. Um, but I like this. I like this publisher. I want to check out more stuff. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what, I forgot the name you called it. For me, it says Pow Pow Press.
Yeah, well,
Um,
in French it's Edition Pow Pow, but I'm guess in English it's Pow Pow Press.
okay.
Um, they have really amazing, like they try really hard to translate their comic books, and that's something that I don't see often around here. A lot of the time, like they only translate like really popular or awards-winning comics, but this publisher really tries its like best to like offer both French and English comic, and that's something really nice. And I was really excited because the French version came out. I think maybe 2 years after they translated, 2 years before they translated it, or maybe 1 year, something like that. And when I saw there was a translation coming, I was like, I need to send this to Ryan, because for me it was such a great book. I mean, it was so emotional. There's like this character Marcel, he works so hard
Yeah.
throughout all the books, and his biggest dream is to have a little farm, right? He wants to plant vegetables, he wants to like have his cow, he wants like his own, he wants to have like his own little thing, but
Yeah.
it's impossible, unfortunately, in that area. It's like the soil is really rocky,
Right.
so it's really hard to grow fruits and vegetables and stuff, so on the soil. So seeing his dream like collapsed after
I
he
know.
worked
It's
so
heartbreaking.
hard.
It's heartbreaking. And then he also has the pushback from like the rest of the community when he's like, "No,
Yeah,
I don't want to do this fucking chopping down wood anymore. I don't want to do this. I want to farm." And like they're combating him, you know?
yeah,
And the end, I wouldn't say it's sad. I wouldn't say it's a sad ending, but
It's a new beginning, but it's
yeah.
still sad to
But I'm
let
saying,
go of
like,
all
there's
that
like,
work.
okay, like, as I'm looking at the last page, like, the last image you get of Marcel, like, he doesn't look happy and he doesn't look sad. He's just looking down. Like, that's what I was saying. And he looks up and he's looking in the woods, and you have, like, literally 3 pages of trees.
Yeah.
It's like, that was his life for such a long time. Fucking trees. Chopping them down and fucking selling the wood. And building houses in the community and stuff like that. So, yeah, it was a really, really cool project. Like I said, I mean, I don't know what else Francis has done. I want to check out more if
He
there's
does
more work.
this writer does a lot of good stuff. He usually the ones that the ones that I read from him are usually a bit more in the like funny style, like a little bit more humor. This one was a really serious piece. I mean, I don't really know a lot of him, but it was a real serious piece I read, and I thought he like usually, like when a writer tries something new, it's like either works or either doesn't. And this one really worked really well. It was a really nice surprise to read this book.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying so usually there's humor. I mean, like that's kind of I would say that that's similar to like what Jim Carrey did with his movies. Like everybody knew him as a comedic actor, and then he did some serious movies, and people were like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" Like he's got range. So I mean, I'm assuming that's kind of similar with him. Like that's why he like this probably won awards also because it was like so different from the rest of his content that they're like, "Wow, this is really something special."
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really great. The other book we read was Nunavik, and like I said,
Yeah.
it's a travel diary. So it's basically the writer Michel Hellman, who's actually a really popular writer around here because he wrote a book called Mild End. Yes, sorry. So he wrote a book called Mild End, and it was a really popular book, and everybody was waiting for a second, like a second book from the same series, Mild End, because Mild End is it's an area in Montreal, a really popular area. So he just wrote like basically how it is to live in the Mild End, and the second book was like we were waiting for it, and his boss was waiting for it, and everybody was waiting for it. He kind of like experienced like a blank page moment. He didn't know what to write. He wasn't inspired, so he just took a
And
trip
this is
to
and this is that story.
yeah,
Okay, okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
So he came up with this book Nunavik instead of coming up with Mild and Two, and I think it's brilliant how it is written, and I really love how he talks about his experience because Nunavik is up north, like really up north, like it's really up north, and it's not something that you really go visit, because we have this misconception around here that there's nothing to do there. It's like a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs, a lot of prostitutions. That's the like misconception that we are thrown in our face for people who lives in big cities. And it was really interesting to see someone actually go there and coming back with a positive feedback, you know?
Yeah.
And I really love there's a scene in this book where I think he's in the plane and someone asks him, "What are you going to do up there?" And he says, "I'm just going to visit." And he's like, "Are you a journalist? Are you a photographer? Are you like, what are you? What are you doing?" He's like, "No, I'm just visiting. I'm a tourist." And he's like, "There's no tourist that goes there.
Yeah.
Nobody goes there." You always have like, you need to have either a job or like a goal to go up there, you know?
Yeah, I
And
mean
I think
even when he gets down to the town, like that dude that picks him up in the truck is like he even mentions like I got speed. And I
yeah,
was like, what the
he's a
fuck?
straight up drug dealer because
Yeah.
that's the conception that because the laws are different and everything, there's a little bit more like I don't want to say freedom, but it's different. That's this conception that we have as a citizen, like when we think about up north, and it's something that we really need to deconstruct. It's something that we really need to like work on because that's not how it is. It's actually a different culture in a different community, and I
Mhm.
think he did really well to explaining how this community works. I don't know for you, but I was really surprised to see his story with the freezer that everybody like puts their like they go hunting and everybody go like put their meat in the same freezer for
Mhm.
the elders who can't go hunt anymore. They can go in the freezer. It's like for everybody to share. And that's
Yeah.
something really cool and interesting that you don't hear a lot. You know, it's a community based on helping others and like sharing. And that's something really unique.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think it's interesting his choice too to make himself not look human. Um, I don't is that like I don't know what kind of animal he's supposed to be,
He's
but
like a little teddy bear, I think.
okay, little teddy bear. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
that's
thought that
something very unique to the book.
yeah, I was like at first I'm like, wait, why is this dude like I'm like, oh, is it gonna be all animals, like anthropomorphic, right? But no, he's sitting on the fucking bench, you know, like you said, like how's your second book coming, right? And he's sitting there, and it's a dude from Pow Pow Press, like just chilling, asking him this question. But I was like, okay, so it's just him, just he's gonna be a fucking animal. Seeing this other like town, like you know, like you said, the misconceptions, and I mean, you could do that with like anybody, like
Yeah.
people contempt prior to investigation, where you think something is a certain way because of like the stories you hear, but it's not always true, and sometimes you do have to experience it to be like, oh, okay, it's like people are exaggerating, like this isn't exactly how it is, or this person isn't who I thought they were because I was listening to somebody else tell me how they are. And I did read after I read the book. I on Goodreads I saw that people were like half and half, saying that he should have touched more on the Inuit people
Yeah.
and their community instead of just like him being there and making it all about him. But
But it's a travel
it
diary,
is
you know?
exactly. So I was like, but it's
He's
him
not a
though. It's
journalist.
yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
telling his own story. So
I
for
thought
me,
it would.
that's how I saw it.
Right, and I took it that way too. I do think it would have been kind of cool to learn a little bit more about the people and the experience and like his like perception of them as a people. But yeah, I mean overall, it was another interesting book. It's a story like I've never read a story like this before. I have read travel logs, but it was way different. Like it was a Carnet de Voyage by Craig Thompson. So he
Yeah.
did a travel log journal when he went to research his Habibi book, right? So that was way
But
different
he
type of
went
book.
to research, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah,
difference because Michel Hellman didn't go to research. He went as a tourist. He went to
yeah,
visit.
yeah,
And I think that's something like you can't pick up this book expecting him to do research and
yeah.
explaining it to you because that's not what he went that's not what he did when he went there. He visited. He just like explored and
Right.
just
And
straight
then
up
he
being a
just happened to
tourist.
have a story. He just happened to like, oh, okay, maybe I'll turn this in as my second book.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it was like this one was like the other one wasn't as funny. Little Russia was like a more serious tone. Nunavik was I mean, I found myself like chuckling to myself as I
Did
was
you
reading
laugh when
it.
he with the bear? Like when he's afraid of the bear, he's like just put in a room and they're like, "Oh, just be careful. There might be a bear coming in." Like and he
Yeah.
just can't sleep all night.
Yeah. This is cartooning that like reminds me of like old cartoon strips, like newspaper strips, which we don't
Yeah.
see.
I'm really glad you brought this up. And if I have some French Canadian listening to me right now, they're gonna get really mad at me. But that's the classic cartoon style is something that we are like we didn't get past that. It's how like Quebec's comics are still drawn to this day,
Oh, all of them?
and almost all of them. For me,
Oh,
when I
wow.
flip through a French Canadian comic, it's like almost always the same art style, and that's something that I've talked about with a lot like other people when I go to my comic store and everything, and that's something that I'm like, why are we still in this that why do we still have that same art style? Like, why is it still the same type of comic? You know, I'm still like wondering because I read a lot of European and American. I'm like, they all have like they are exploring different styles and everything. You can pick up an American comic and flip through the pages, and it's gonna be like you can have like watercolors, you can have like digital, you can have like all type of art style. But when you pick a French Canadian comic, it's always that same old cartoonish style. And I know that people are gonna disagree with me, but that's my personal opinion.
I mean, yeah, for me, these are the first ones I've read. So, I mean, the styles in and of themselves are different, these two, you
But it's
know,
still
but
like
at the same
black and
time,
white cartoon.
right, it's still like something I would see in like a comic strip. you know, and I like it, but and I don't read a lot of it, so it's like
Yeah.
it didn't bother me, but I could see how like if that's all the American comics were, I'd be
I can,
like,
but I can I show? We're on camera. I'm gonna show you.
okay,
I have all of these, okay? They're all published by the same publisher, but it's still different writers. It's all the same.
oh, I like
It's
that one. I saw a little bit of the art on that one.
it's
That
crazy
one's
how
cool.
like
What was that last one? What was that last one? Show me
this
the
one.
book. Yeah, I like
It's
that
a
style.
yeah. It's a there's no dialogue.
Is that a? Oh, he's just sitting there smoking at the typewriter. Okay,
Yeah.
I like
He's
that. That's a cool
basically
style.
yeah. It's a rabbit, and he's fighting. He's not fighting, but he's trying to avoid death, and it's there's no dialogue.
Oh wow, okay. I like that style though. That style's pretty dope. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
but
see
it's
what you're
still black
saying.
and white cartoon.
I mean, I see what you're saying. I really love black and white comics, so that's never going to be a problem for me. I can see what like you want to see more than just cartoony style. I get it.
Exactly. This one is different. Like you have color, it's a different style,
Oh,
but
that's
this one
dope.
came out
Yeah.
recently, you know? It's different. It's finally a different one, but that's what I want. I want to see more different style anyway.
That's a really nice style. Yeah, I saw a little bit of the pages. It's really good. I mean, this publisher. I mean, I'm kind of excited. I kind of want to check out some more stuff. I mean, Pow Pow. Both of these books, I think, are both unique in and of themselves of what they are, the content that they're producing. I mean, this is my first time reading. I guess reading foreign comics that are not American. Maybe that's not true. I don't know. I mean, I may have read stuff adapted. No, I've read manga, so that's not true.
Yeah, you
Uh,
probably read European comic. French Canadian comics are really great, but it's a market. It's still a market that's fighting for survival.
yeah.
It's better
Well,
now, but it was hard. Like it had a hard time in the history of Quebec's comics. The industry had to fight American comics and European comics. You know, like the really big titles like Marvel and DC. That when Marvel and DC came here for the first time, it took all the place. And then you had the European comic like Tintin, Asterix, who took the other place. It was 50% American and 50% European. So the Quebec market was kind of like just fighting to like have a place in the middle. And we're getting there, but it's still like
I mean, hey, dude, competition breeds creativity and breeds more
exactly.
better stuff. So like that's what you got to do. I mean, look at even American comics, man. What's at the top? Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
So just like you're saying, like French Canadian comics have to fight for a place. Smaller publishers, smaller creatives, or creatives that aren't working for those have to fight just to have a spot on the shelf too. So it's the same thing. It's just it's not a country fighting against another country's work. So I mean, it's different in that respect. But I mean, I say that like take that as a challenge, to all the creators in producing French Canadian comics, like just fucking keep fucking doing it
Yeah.
because and then translate more of it and get in. I don't know. Maybe it's not cost effective. I know that shipping is very expensive to ship, but try to like coordinate with a publisher out here to help distribute your work,
Yeah.
distribute the books. That way, it's not as expensive. Like there are publishers such as like Uncivilized is one of my favorite indie publishers, and they're small. They don't do a lot of stuff. But they do like Ginseng Roots by Craig Thompson. MS
Yeah.
Harkness is doing she did Tinderella and Guild Desperate Pleasures, I think is the other one. Like there are publishers that they could connect with and help distribute them in English, and I think that would be beneficial for them for their work here, and then beneficial over there too. Like that's
The
how.
the thing is that we have a very weird, and that's something that again, it's all my personal opinion. I'm not an expert in this. Like I don't study the market or anything, but we have a really weird relationship with English, right? Because the history of Quebec is being a French province in the middle of a English country. So technically, we are supposed to be bilingual, but we're trying to focus a lot on, well, it's like a it's a war. It's a war between two languages in the same province, between French and English, and in the middle you have bilingual. And most often, it happens often that a piece like of literature is only going to be written in French and it's never going to be translated in English. Like there's a really popular writer here. He's like our Quebec Stephen King, if you want to. He's like a really master of writing horror stories. He wrote so many great books and there's only two translating in English. And I still don't know. I still don't understand why, you know? And it's just the way the market is made. We focus a lot of French, and I agree that French is super essential. Like, I fight all the time to have, like, everything written in French first. But if you want to when you have an industry like comic books and you only focus on one language, it's nice, like, you don't expect to grow, you know? Like, even European comic are translated in English all the time. You know, like, I'm pretty sure you have access to English European comics as much as you have access to American comics. And it's a shame that we don't focus on that. You know, it's interesting to see how the industry is different from different countries, but also different provinces, you know? Canadian comics and Quebec comics are so different because it's two different languages. And it's so interesting. It's like, it fascinates me all the time when I ask questions like, but why? Why don't we do both French and English? You know, we have this capacity of being bilingual. We have this like treasure of being a bilingual country, but we're still fighting over one language, like French and English. Like, it's either one or the other. You can't have both. But no, you actually, in fact, can have both, and it should be beneficial to you, you know?
Yeah. I'm loving this, the passion you have for, dude. You should hit up one of the publishers. You should hit them up, and we could do an episode with them. We could both talk to them. You could say it from your perspective, and I could say it from my perspective here. You know, and we could ask them, like, why don't you guys try to push more for more translated books? Because how the fuck are other people supposed to discover it? They can't read it. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like you can't just expect the entire world to be able to read French. Like, I would love to be able to read other languages, but I don't. And like, to learn another language would take a long time for me. Like, to be able to read it fluently to where, like, I would prefer to read in that language as opposed to reading in English, like, that would take years, you know? And
especially French is a very difficult language to learn, apparently.
You know what? When I was in school in seventh grade, I was living in Colorado for a year, and they had a foreign language class, but it was not one language. It was, you spent like a couple weeks, 2 or 3 weeks on multiple languages. French was the easiest for me. I found French easier to learn than Spanish. I don't know why. It just, like, it came easier to me. I don't remember any of it, but because that was a long time ago. I was like, what, 20 years ago, 21 years ago. So, but it wasn't that hard. It's not. I just think the older you get, the harder it is to kind of retain that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's why they always say, like, if you want to learn another language, or you want your kids to learn another language, you start them young, because that's when their brain is absorbing it and it's easier for them to pick up on it. But I mean, that's besides the point. But I do think that, like, yeah, it's a shame, because, like, Drawn Quarterly is based in Canada, right? I think it's
but they focus more on English.
Right.
Yeah, you see?
I know. So, I mean, they're one of my favorite publishers. I mean, they publish some of my favorite comics.
But that's my point. You know, they focus more on English, and then other publishers focus more on French. There's no, like, in between of, like, focusing on bilingual. Like, I don't get how, like, you have this capacity of bringing two languages together by doing bilingual comics, and even at that, you know, Nunavik, you have the English version, so you probably don't have the same, like, it's not the same thing, but in French, the English dialogue are written in English.
Oh, so weird. Oh,
you have cool. Two languages in one book, and that's really cool.
Yeah, and sometimes you get that here. Like, sometimes you'll see, like, a character speaking Spanish and the rest of it's English, you know? Yeah. Which for me, I'm like, well, fuck, I don't know what the fuck they said. You know, so I'm like, I guess I'll just guess at the response that it was written in English to the fucking speaking in Spanish. But that is interesting. Yeah, I mean, you literally, you're growing your readership by publishing it in other languages, publishing this book in Spanish, publishing this book in, you know, a number of, not just English, but a number of languages. Like, that's how readership grows. Like, I mean, are American comics, are they only published in English, or like they have some in French as well, right? I mean, like, there's all sorts of, I mean, I see it all the time, especially like with older stuff. You'll see like, oh, this is the French version of it. Oh, this is the Spanish version of it. In single issue, you know, like, so it doesn't make sense to me why any creator or any publisher would just limit themselves by being closed-minded and not, I mean,
the philosophy here is that if you start doing that, like if you start focusing more on English than French, or if you start like there's a really big mentality that if you don't do things exclusively in French, French is gonna disappear from Quebec. That's the big philosophy behind it, and I get it. But at the same time, when you have an industry like the comic industry, and I often hear people complain that the Quebec's comics is not as big as they want it to be, and I'm like, don't ask why. Like, this is why it's not as big as you want it to be, you know? But it's like, again, it's like every time you're gonna ask someone, they're gonna tell you something different, because we all have different experiences and we all have different like way of seeing it. Even like just local comic store. Every time I go to a local comic store, I like to talk about this subject in Montreal. And every time the owner of the comic store is going to tell me something different. Like the different comic store, they're going to tell me something different. Like, oh, I don't see a problem. I think we have enough like English versions of Quebec comics. Or the others are like, yeah, but we're still stuck in the little cartoonish black and white art style. You know, like everybody is having a different opinion. And I think it's really interesting, you know? Anyway, I'm just sharing, like, in the Thought Balloon episode, how it's going on here.
I'm interested in this because I don't know anything about that industry. I mean, we used Little Russia and Nunavik as, like, a jumping off point, really. I don't think we were really trying to use this as, like, another episode to just review a book. You know what I mean? Like, it was just to get us talking about, you know, French-Canadian comics.
I think it's interesting to have, but even if you take like a classic European comic, it's gonna be very different than an American comic. The way that the panels are made, the way that even the like public, like I was talking with a guy from France, and he was telling me that they only have hardcovers available there. They don't have soft covers. For like, if you take a Marvel comic and they translate it in French, it's always gonna be a hardcover. How crazy is that?
I mean, I love that. I think I love hardcovers. I think that all books should be in hardcover, and I think it's because they treat comics more as literature than some countries. You know what I mean? Some countries are like, oh, it's, you know, it's for kids. No, it's like this is a piece of literature, and it deserves to be presented as such. You know, and I think that's why a lot of, like, especially European publishers, you know, you hear it's all hard, like you said, all hardcover. I mean, even one of my favorite series, Scalped, that's not in print here, but it's in print in Europe, is printed in black and white hardcover. So it's a color comic here, but there it's produced in black and white.
Yeah.
It's hardcover. It's readily available, and it's interesting to see how different countries treat comic books.
Yeah.
And the way they present them. It's very interesting. I mean, we could do one on European comics. You know, we can do another episode on that. Like, there's so many, and then there's a publisher. I forgot the name of it, but South Africa, and the way that they are producing their comics, and mostly what I saw was online, and I read a couple of them. It's free to download. I could send you the link too. It was this creator called Juni Ba, and I saw his art, and it's that's what's fun about comics, is that everyone produces them differently, especially when you go to different parts of the world.
It's a different culture.
Yeah,
you can see it.
Yeah, I'm glad you got me these. I mean, I love them, and I'm glad we can kind of share this with people that may not be familiar with them. And I'll throw links down too. I'm sure they have a website that you can
Yeah.
go to, and I'll put that down below. So if anybody is interested, I'm gonna throw up some art too in the video. So yeah, this is cool, man. I want to see. I want to read more. I saw some of those other ones. Those looked really dope. So
Yeah, and it's funny because I think that all the ones that I showed you, the like you mentioned two comics that you really love the art, and I'm pretty sure they'd make it in English too. So I'm gonna try and find them for you, and I'm gonna ship those because I think you're gonna really love them.
well, thank you, man. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that I had no idea about the French Canadian comic scene and like your feelings on it. I mean, it's crazy to see. Like, it's very easy. Like, if you don't want to like give up on making French comics, okay, then wait a year in between translations. Then
Yep.
your fans that want to read it in French, they're not going to want to wait, right? Like, they're going to want it now. Me personally, if you told me that a book was coming out in another language, right? I knew. I don't know what kind of an example, but like I wouldn't want to wait. I would want it right now. Like I wouldn't wait for an easier version to read. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it just doesn't make sense to me. So that's how you. I mean, you said what? Which one did you say was 2 years? Little
Little
Russia.
Russia. Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
translation it was one or two because it first came out. I want to say 2019. I think it first came out in 2019, but the translation was like
This
just
year,
became
2020.
available.
Yeah, 2020 is when it says that
Yeah,
this version was
the
made.
English version was 2020, and I think the French version was 2019, 2018. So 2 years.
Yeah. See,
There's
so
a 2 years difference.
come on, French Canadian creators. Let's go. Let's fucking
But
bring
at
that
least it
shit.
got translated. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
There's so many French comics that never get translated, and
I
I
think
don't
all
know
books should be
why.
translated. I think everything should always be translated. You know, I mean, you're like I said, you limit your viewership or your readership when not everybody can read it.
Yeah.
You know, and I think
But I
that
just
that's
don't, I really don't get it. And maybe I'm wrong, like I said, I'm not an expert. I didn't go through all the Quebec publishers to see who's available in both languages. But when I try to find, like, for example, when I was shopping for you and saying, like, I want to send books to Ryan, what is available in English? It was hard, man. It was really hard. I was like, oh, I really love this book. Is it available in English? No, it's not. Okay, move on. Which one? It was
yeah.
hard because I want to share my favorite Quebec comics so much, but it's so hard when it's only available in French. And I just, like you said, it's the best way to expand readership. And I need to have this answer as to, like, if someone has the answer somewhere, please tell me because I don't get why it's not translated, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, that was my rant.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, dude. I don't really have anything else to say on it other than thank you for sending me these books. Thank you for giving me a little glimpse into the, Quebec comic book scene that I didn't even. I mean, I know that it exists, but like I've never experienced it, and I really love these books.
Yeah.
Really, really dope, and I'm excited to see what else comes out from that comic book scene.
I'm gonna share more, way more. And if anybody has ever read Little Russia or Nunavik, please share your thoughts because it's something that I always love to hear. If you dislike them or if you like them, share them no matter what. Because I think we can really benefit from just talking about different um, comics from different origins.
Yeah, and if there's any other types of like books you guys want us to look at from like different comic book scenes, different countries, like let us know, man, because we're more than happy to talk about them. It's not just about American comic books on this channel. Like it's about comics as a whole. So
Yeah.
yeah, really, really fun chat, dude. And I can't wait to talk about some more fucking different comics. I know that we talked about that before, you and I, that we're not just going to talk. I think we're going to start to talk about some of our books, some nonfiction books, or some books that aren't necessarily falling in line with like the indie comic books that you would expect, like Image, Dark Horse, or Marvel or DC. I think it'll be fun to kind of shed some light on some of those type of books as well. And if you're not already following us, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at The Comic Lounge. You can follow Jen at Life of a Geeky Mind on Instagram. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video goes up. And on that note, we're out.